Waterhemp in Roosevelt County. And as they said, I am the Ag and Natural Resource Agent over here in Roosevelt County. So start out, we're going to discuss some history. So this is the first time that we've identified water in Roosevelt County, in Montana. There is a caveat to that. There was plants, a couple isolated individual plants that were found in the late 1940s in West Montana, but they removed those plants and there hasn't been any reports of water since then. So this is the first time we've identified water hemp in modern days. We identified it in 2020, and it was identified in a dryland barley and wheat field, but it also had extended into a sugar beet and barley field that was under irrigation, that was adjacent to that field. And the location of this field, you understand, the field is on the north side of the Missouri River. And then to the north of that field is a marshy area, a riparian area, and then there's the railroad tracks. And when we first found it, when it first was brought in and we did our tentative identification, we hypothesized that it came in from the train because of the location of the field. However, when I surveyed the right-of-way of the train tracks, of the railroad right-of-way, we could not find any water hemp in that right-of-way. And when we surveyed the marsh, we found a few isolated plants, but not the number of plants we thought we would find if it had been the source of the location, especially considering water hemp likes moist areas. So you would expect if it was the source of the location that there would be a lot of plants in, but they were only isolated. They were not as prevalent as they were in the two fields. And once we started interviewing the landowner, we found out that he had hired custom cutters from Minnesota for several years. And so our working hypothesis now is that it came in on the custom cutters. So we're getting a little background on water hemp. Water hemp is a dioecious pigweed, similar to like palm amaranth, and most of our pigweeds in this area are monoecious. So that means it has two sexes. There's a male plant and there's a female plant. And about the only way you can tell, a little bit of different morphology in their seed head, but it's difficult to tell that. The best way to tell the different sexes is to rub that seed head between your hands, and only the female produces seed. So if you rub that seed head, you'll get little black seeds in your hand if it's a female plant. The seedling likes to emerge when soil temperatures start approaching mid-50s. And I was seeing there was some research done in North Dakota where it looked like they started emerging around May 23rd and emerged through July 11th. Over here, we tend to reach mid-50s soil temperatures after Memorial Day, and quite often after the 1st of June. So that's when you will start to see seedlings emerge. And when the seedlings emerge, their cotyledon leaf is going to be notched, and it's going to be egg-shaped, and it's going to be glossy, waxy in appearance. And it's not going to have any hairs. So unlike red root pigweed, there will be no hairs on the leaf. When that first true leaf starts to appear, it's going to be longer and more lance-shaped. Once the plant starts to reach maturity, it can produce up to 1 million seeds though it's more common for it to produce about 100,000 seeds. And it's going to have the flower head and seed head. They're long and unbranched, and they're thinner. As you can see here, these are the seed heads in that beet field. And you can see they're long and unbranched, and they're going to be narrower than Palmer. They're very thin in appearance. They can generally get, the plant grows anywhere from 4 inches tall to 12 feet tall, though generally it's more around the 4 to 5 foot mark. And to give you an idea, so the first time somebody brought in a plant and we weren't able to identify it was in 2019. And when we went out there, when the person brought it in, he said it was very prominent. You could see it sticking up out of the field. Well, when we went back out there in 2020 to collect better samples, when we went out there, you can see it because it was a drier year in 2020. And those plants were right at the canopy level, and you really had to get out there in the field to look for it. Though about 2 weeks later, the pictures, and you'll see that on the next slide, the plants has started to come up above the canopy, but it was the same time of year that we collected the samples, that he brought me the samples the first year. And that difference in rainfall, plants were at canopy level the second year. First year, they were well above canopy level, 1 to 2 foot above canopy level. All right. And on the seeds, I mentioned the little black seeds. They're extremely small. They're oar-shaped, but that's really hard to see with the naked eye. They're just small black seeds. So our plan of action, based upon the history, so it looks like it's been there for at least 2 years, but we suspect it's been there much longer, based on the size of the infestation. And the size of the infestation and the location is going to be extremely difficult to contain it in the marshy riparian area because it's right up to the water line, and in some places it's actually into where what would be below the spring water line. So it's going to be very difficult to control it in that riparian area. It's going to probably require some man hours of pulling plants. We're very limited on herbicides that we can use in that riparian area. And the riparian area is owned by the tribe, so we also have to coordinate any control with the tribe. So based upon those factors, elimination is probably not a realistic goal for us at this point. So we're looking at containment. And as part of that containment, we're going to be doing sensitivity trials. In fact, those are already ongoing. We did collect plants with mature seed heads. And like I said, they're very prolific seed producers. So we got lots of seeds. And Dr. Seipel and Dr. Shagwell are conducting sensitivity trials right now in Bozeman on those plants to see what herbicides they are going to be sensitive to. One of the problems with water hemp is that it has multiple modes of action that it can be resistant to. And basically you can assume it's going to be resistant to group 9s, glyphosate, and group 2s, the ASLs. So, but we will test those just to make sure, but it can also contain multiple other modes of action that it is resistant to. So we will be testing those, and we got some suggestions from NDSU as to what chemicals to be looking at, what herbicides, chemistries to be looking at. So we'll be conducting those, and we have plenty of seeds. If there's some chemistries you are curious or you've seen problems with in North Dakota that maybe you might want us to look at, please let us know. And I will give you my email address at the end of this, and you can email me those suggestions. Or if there's a chemistry you use a lot on pigweeds in your fields, please let us know what those are so that we can make sure that we include those in the trials, make sure that we're looking to see what is going to be most effective against treating this. So our cropping plan is partially based upon what our sensitivity trials show. And of course, we wanted to see what is going to work for this, but we want to be treating the fields with something that is obviously going to work on this, but has some residual. So in the spring, we would plant before we plant, we put down a pre-plant herbicide that is going to have some carryover, some residual action in the field. And then we want to plant a small grain into those fields early to get a well-established canopy before those seedlings begin to emerge to produce competition. Now, we have two cropping options that we have offered to the farmer. The first one would be to plant a forage variety small grain and harvest it early. So we're talking mid-June, just after those seedlings begin to emerge from the soil. And so we would treat it, plant this forage variety, then harvest the forage variety early, bale, and then treat the field again. And hopefully that would get rid of most of the plants or control the number of plants. The second option is to plant a seed variety, a grain variety of a small grain, and bring it to maturity and harvest it. But we would do a pre-plant and then we would do an in-field, in-crop treatment. And the idea is to keep this field, the two fields, out of broadleaves for the next 2 to 3 years so that we can, and keep them in small grains so that we can have that in-crop option to treat with this.
Hey, Jeff. Just a 1 minute warning.
Oh, okay. I'm almost done, Claire. The farmer is in no-till and he does not desire to break no-till at this point. And tillage would be another option, and tillage would actually be one of the better options because if you bury those seeds, they don't last very long. But being in a no-till, those are the two options we offered for controlling it in no-till. And with that, do you have any questions?
One question was, any indication if the water hemp has gotten out of that area, like along the river or water systems?
Not yet, but it's a little early. I would expect if we were going to see that, it would be, I would suspect to see it this summer if it has escaped this area. I would, yeah, the answer is no, I don't have any indication of that at this point, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened, and we may not, and we would probably see that most likely this summer. And it could very well do that because this seed is small, it likes to float, and this field has a tendency to flood, and it did flood in 2020. So there is a possibility seed did get down into the river system.